In the remote mountains of Utah, James was seeking solace from his bustling city life. A wildlife photographer, he had heard rumors about a place deep in the mountains where the wild ran undisturbed and the sky stretched wide over untouched valleys. The locals, however, had always whispered warnings about those woods. Tales of strange creatures that wore the skins of other beings, skinwalkers, they said. But James, eager for adventure, had brushed off their warnings as little more than superstitious folklore. After a long day of hiking and capturing the breathtaking scenes, he set up his tent by a creek as dusk settled, casting a long, eerie shadows through the trees. He built a small fire, preparing for a peaceful night under the stars. But as the first traces of darkness fell, a chill seeped into the air that wasn't just from the dropping temperatures. It felt like he was being watched. Around midnight, James was jolted awake by a sound just outside his tent. A whisper, faint and chilling, drifting in the night wind. He held his breath, straining his ears. There it was again, like someone calling his name, but distorted, twisted, almost mechanical. James. James. His heart pounded. He knew no one else was around. He hadn't seen a soul for miles. The rational part of his mind told him it was probably just the wind, but the voices sounded oddly familiar. He sat up, unzipping his tent, just a fraction, and peered into the darkness. The fire had dwindled to embers, casting a dim, flickering glow. Shadows danced among the trees, but nothing seemed out of place as he started to pull the zipper closed. He heard it again, closer this time. James! Against his better judgment, he stepped out the tent, the cold air biting through his shirt. The forest was unnaturally silent. No rustles of leaves, no night birds calling, just an oppressive, all-consuming quiet. His flashlight cut a small cone of light through the darkness, illuminating only patches of trees and brush. Suddenly, he saw a movement at the edge of the light. His breath caught a figure was standing just beyond the firelight, a shadowy, gangly figure that seemed too tall, too thin. His head was tilted to the side, eyes gleaming with an unnatural, animalistic glow. "Hello," James called out, though his voice was barely a whisper. The figure shifted, stepping forward, and that's when James saw it. The creature wore the face of a man, but something was horribly wrong. His skin hung loosely, stretched over his bones as if it didn't quite fit. The eyes, empty, soulless, locked into his, and it grinned, revealing rows of crooked, needle-like teeth. Paralyzed by fear, James felt the creeping realization wash over him. This wasn't human. This was something ancient, something that didn't belong to go with the natural world. A skinwalker. His grandmother told him stories of creatures like this, beings that could mimic human voices, lure people into the wilderness, and wear their skins like clothing. The creature took another step forward, then another, its movements jerky and unnatural, as if it were trying to remember how to walk with each step. The smell of decay grew stronger, filling James' nostrils until he felt sick. In a sudden burst of adrenaline, he spun around, bolting toward the trail he had come from. He ran, branches scratching on his arm and face, his heart pounding louder than his footsteps. Behind him, he heard the creature give chase, his footsteps unevenly and chafing, but somehow closing in with an unnatural speed. Just as he reached a clearing, he tripped, crashing down into the cold earth. He scrambled to get up, but it was too late. The creature was upon him, looming over him, his hollow eyes burning with a sinister glee. "James," it crooned, voice now sounding more like his own, mocking him. He squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the worst, but then in the distance he heard a faint call of a coyote, a sound that seemed to steer something in the creature. The skinwalker paused, his head whipping toward the noise. It let out a low, growled growl before retreating back in the shadows, melting away as if it had never been there at all. James lay there in the dirt, gasping, his heart still still racing. When he finally gathered the courage to open his eyes, he saw nothing but empty forest. The creature was gone, leaving only the echo of his twisted voice in his mind. He didn't wait. He stumbled to his feet and ran, abandoning his camp, abandoning his equipment, everything. He didn't stop until he reached his car at the trailhead. Back in the safety of his car, he drove away from the mountains, his hands trembling as he gripped the wheel. In the days that followed, he never spoke of what he saw. The locals noticed he never returned to that mountain again, and when they asked, he'd only shake his head, the terror still lurking in his eyes and whispers still being heard in his mind. Some things ain't meant to be seen, but every so often in the dead of night, he would hear it again, a faint, faraway voice calling his name, and every time he knew it was waiting somewhere out there watching him with eyes that remember. James. James.